Hey guys, welcome back to another movie review video. Today we're going to be starting Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a movie series that was made by Walt Disney Pictures and was directed by Gore Verbinski. One of his other movies is Rango, which we'll be covering on Thursday, or whenever that comes out. I can't remember. It very much depends on how the copyright problems occur when it comes to the Hunger Games movies. If I can get that figured out, then that'll actually be coming out on Thursday. But if I can't, then it can't, kind of a thing. But the first movie in the Pirates of the Caribbean series is The Curse of the Black Pearl. It came out in 2003, and it is really good. Like, from a critical standpoint, it is a very good movie. I wouldn't say it's great or anything. It doesn't do anything extravagant necessarily, but for when it came out, the amount of visual effects that were put into the movie, they did a phenomenal job. Now, without further ado, to briefly explain what I do in these videos, I'm going to do a very, very brief summary of the video, and then I'm going to tell you what I think of the movie, give you my personal input and some cool, interesting facts that I could find about the movie throughout the synopsis. And then towards the end of the video, I will tell you what I actually feel about the movie, my personal opinions, what I thought they did right, what I thought they did wrong, what they could have improved upon, so forth and so on. And I'll give you my score for the movie. So stay tuned for that. And at the end of the video, I have a little bit of an announcement, so be sure to stick around for that. But without further ado, the movie starts in 1720. Governor Swan and his daughter are on a boat sailing to Port Royal, Jamaica, when they come across a shipwreck where they find the boy, William Turner, and Swan's daughter, Elizabeth, immediately becomes infatuated with him. And it's pretty much set up right off the bat that she has this weird, almost obsession with pirates. She's singing a pirate song, which is definitely interesting. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, for those of you who have watched the movie, which I highly recommend you do, but Mr. Gibbs, the sailor who tells Elizabeth not to sing about pirates, becomes a pirate. It's kind of funny, but it happens much later on in the movie where we re-meet Gibbs. Anyways, Elizabeth finds this medallion that she sees around Will's neck, and she takes it so he's not discovered to be a pirate as well. And we fast forward 8 years into the future, so it's 1728, and we get our first introductions to Captain Jack Sparrow. An interesting and kind of funny fact about Captain Jack is his actor and his character were meant to be side characters. They weren't meant to be the main person, but Johnny Depp did such a good job acting as Jack Sparrow that so many people fell in love with his character that by the third or fourth movie in the series, he became the main character of the franchise. After we watch Jack do a few shenanigans, we cut back to Elizabeth, and she's much older. She's played by Keira Knightley, her older self. You might also recognize her from Pride and Prejudice. I personally have never seen that movie, but she plays in a lot of historical time dramas, which is just kind of interesting. She's been prompted for an engagement by Norrington, Commodore. He's also referred to as throughout the majority of the film because he actually gets promoted at the very beginning of the movie. But on her way to his promotion ceremony, she reunites with Will Turner because he made the blade, of which is a present from Governor Swan, Elizabeth's dad, to her betrothed but not yet kind of a thing. Anyways, we cut back to Johnny Depp's character, Jack Sparrow, as he is trying to commandeer a ship and crew, but firstly the ship, and he's having this funny banter between him and two guards. I don't know what it is about those two guards, but they're probably one of the best parts of the movie. Just their in-between banter is great. And one thing that is set up pretty much immediately about Jack Sparrow's character is the fact that he tells the truth quite often, but often also says really confusing things that people think he's lying. But he pretty much right off the bat, sets himself up to be a very honest individual, which throws people off because people are always like, you wouldn't tell me the truth because you're a pirate. And it just sets up some future really good banter, especially in the next movie. After the ceremony, Elizabeth is prompted by the Commodore to have an engagement and get married, and because of 17th or 16th century style for women, she started to suffocate due to the corset that she was wearing, passes out and falls off of a cliff, and barely manages to survive from the surrounding rocks and just lands in a perfect safe space. Jack sees what happens, asks the two guards if they can swim. They both say no, so he gives them all of his gear so they don't get wet, and he dives in and he rescues Elizabeth. After he brings Elizabeth to shore, there's like this quick little banter kind of a thing between him after reviving her, of course. But eventually the Commodore figures out that Jack Sparrow is a pirate, and we get the line of the movie, because there's always a line in these movies that is just kind of repetitively said throughout. For this movie, it is, "You've got to be the worst pirate I've ever seen or heard of," and Jack goes, "Ah, but you've heard of me," kind of a thing. Jack manages to escape by using Elizabeth as a meat shield, and eventually comes across Will's blacksmith shop. He has a duel with Will, which I'll cut in again and say this movie has some of the best choreographed fights I've seen in most Disney movies in general, but especially movies that came out in the early 2000s. But eventually, Jack gets knocked out and taken to prison. And that night, because Elizabeth fell into the water while wearing the medallion that was originally Will's at the very beginning of the film, it alerted the Black Pearl, and specifically the Black Pearl's captain, Captain Barbossa, who was played by Geoffrey Rush. Now, Geoffrey Rush's character, Captain Barbossa, is probably the most pirate of pirates out of all of the films. Very, very pirate-esque look about him. The floofy hat, the whole 9 yards. He commands the Black Pearl and its crew to basically completely invade Port Royal and try and search for the medallion and the person who's holding it, because they are the son or daughter of one of their prior crew members. Eventually, they come across Elizabeth's house and capture her, and she calls for parley, which is part of the pirate's code, and basically it requires that the person who calls for parley to be taken to the captain and safely taken to the captain in order to negotiate. So she arrives and shows up to talk to Captain Barbossa and does a little bit of a negotiation. It goes in her favor quite a bit, but not entirely. After the negotiations, Elizabeth and the rest of the crew of the Black Pearl go to the Isle de Muerta, and on their way, Captain Barbossa explains what happened as to how or why they have to go there. And basically, a rough summary of what happened is a conquistador, Hernan Cortez, steals a bunch of gold from the Aztec after invading what is now Mexico, and in doing so, the Aztec cursed the gold so that his greed would be his enemy, kind of a thing. And so we get to see some real 2000s CG as Elizabeth discovers that the entire crew of the Black Pearl are actually undead in a way, or rather, they cannot die. They starved to death many years ago, so they can't, eat or do anything of that sort, so they can't really live. And in order to break the curse, they need the blood of their former crew who had that medallion, which is no longer considered a medallion. It is a piece of gold. And so because she pretended to be the daughter of Bootstrap Bill, who was their former crew member, she has been taken to get her blood spilled in order to pay the blood sacrifice for the curse, in order to break the curse so that they can live. We're gonna cut back a little bit to Will Turner breaking out Jack Sparrow and going on a little bit of a hijinks in order to get to the fastest boat in the English Navy to catch up to Barbossa on the Isle de Muerta. But they do a quick stop over at Tortuga, which is like a pirate seaport kind of a thing. And they reunite with Gibbs. He comes back, and they recruit a crew. But after securing a crew, they also go to Isle de Muerta, and while there, Jack and Turner see what happens and see that the curse did not break because Elizabeth clearly is not the daughter of Bootstrap Bill. So through a little bit of negotiation, some other shenanigans, and to quickly sum up what happens, they all basically get captured, and Will Turner makes a deal with Barbossa to free the crew and free Elizabeth in order for him to go and, sacrifice himself basically so that they can break the curse and stuff. He manages to do this, but Barbossa sees a little bit of a loophole and maroons Jack and Elizabeth on the same island that he marooned Jack when he mutinied against him and became captain of the Black Pearl. While marooned on this island, Elizabeth creates this big massive fire and causes the Royal Navy to appear. Jack gets rearrested for the second time in the film. In order to basically save his own life, he tells Norrington about how to get to this place, comes up with this real elaborate plan that if they had actually followed would have worked pretty effectively, but they didn't. So Jack goes inside to save Will. Barbossa and Jack negotiate again for the third time of the film. It's kind of funny. But in doing so, he manages to save Will and steals a coin for himself. And a duel breaks out between Barbossa and Jack. While they're dueling, Barbossa's crew invades the ship where all of the soldiers are. And they have like an all-out undead versus redcoat fight. While dueling and stuff, Jack cuts his hand and tosses his coin to Will. Will catches it, cuts his hand because he was holding the other coin, drops it. The curse is broken immediately, and Jack kills Barbossa. A good chunk of his crew also gets killed because they are no longer immortal, kind of a thing. The movie ends with Jack at the gallows getting ready to be hung for his crimes of multitude, and is saved by Will and Elizabeth, and is given a few days head start, kind of a thing. And that is how the movie ends. So, my thoughts on the film. It is a really good film. I think that they did a pretty good job with the material and work that they had. From what I understand, there is no real good inspiration behind the movie. It's just kind of a movie that they made, and it did so phenomenally well that they continued the series in order to continue making money, kind of a thing. To say this movie had a stacked cast is a little bit of an understatement, especially from when these movies came out. Because, you had Johnny Depp playing Jack Sparrow, but you also had Orlando Bloom playing Will Turner. And at the time of these movies coming out, he was also playing Legolas. So just right off the bat, they've got a little bit of a stacked cast. And the movie started off with a budget of $140 million, and internationally, their box office take-home was well over $650 million. This movie isn't anything like a lot of movies that are coming out that have comic book series behind it or a book series behind it or anything like that, but it did extremely well either way. Another fun fact is the screenplay was written by Ted Elliott, who also wrote Aladdin and The Mask of Zorro and Road to El Dorado. He made also wrote a lot of other really good movies. He also wrote Treasure Planet, which is definitely interesting, and another pirate movie that is really good, and I highly recommend people to go watch that movie. I also recommend you guys watch this movie. Though the special effects are a little rough, I'm not gonna lie, they're a little rough. It is a really good movie, and I can't discredit the special effects as much as I probably could, mainly because of it coming out in 2003. With that being said, I think I'll give this movie a score of a solid 6.5 out of 10. are a few things that I don't really like. It's kind of on face value a very basic story. It gets a little bit more complicated later on, but the first movie is pretty basic. Also, you can tell that certain actors acted their asses off and certain other actors didn't put a lot of effort into it. They looked at it more of a paycheck kind of a thing. It is apparent, but not abundantly apparent. I did like the concept behind it, and I do like the fact that it inspired the pirate era of a lot of things. But there's also a few plot holes that I didn't really have an opportunity to talk about while doing the synopsis, because, you know, it's a synopsis. But they do eventually address these plot holes in later movies, so I can't necessarily discredit too much. However, it's not a complete movie, and I know that this movie wasn't originally supposed to spawn 6 other sequels or 5 other sequels or whatever it is. So looking at it from when it came out and how it came out, I do think it deserved the praise that it got, and I'm happy it got the praise that it got because it spawned the later movies, which are significantly better. The second one especially is phenomenal, but we'll get into that next week. With that being said, I think it'll bring us to the wind down section of the video where I give you a little bit of an announcement and stuff. The announcement is next week I'm going to be going on vacation, and so I'm not going to be able to upload. I'll have a couple of videos scheduled to upload, so please do stay tuned for that, and please do watch them. I don't know if they'll become copyright or not, and if they do, I don't really have any control over whether or not I can edit them to meet copyright constrictions. I've been having a lot of trouble with copyright lately. The first Hunger Games movie that I did got copywritten, so I had to edit that one. They told me before it was able to go out super far, so I was able to re-edit and use pictures instead of the movie clips in certain parts. The second Hunger Games movie, I am currently in the middle of trying to delegate and appease the copyright gods. I'm having some real troubles with that, and I might end up getting a copyright strike because when you appeal a copyright claim and they reject it again, it becomes a copyright strike, so you have to actually delete the video. If that happens, I'm not going to continue the Hunger Games series. I've been having a lot of trouble with specifically Lionsgate movies and copyright problems. I don't know why. It just seems like they've got a little bit of a stick up their butt when it comes to copyrights. And to be completely honest, to explain what I do to the movie footage in order to prevent this is I not only mute all movie footage that is provided or that I use, I also mirror it, and each section of the movie that I use is only 5 seconds long. I do use, you know, as you can see, there are sections of the movie that look like they're longer than 5 seconds, but I only use 5-second clips with at least a minute in between each clip in the movie itself. So I don't necessarily think that what I was doing was impeding copyright, and I feel like it's under fair use, but those are my feelings and opinions. It's not really up to me kind of a thing. But if that is the case and I'm not able to upload the future Hunger Games videos, I have a poll up right now as of recording this because I put it up on Saturday, which will fill in the spot of the Hunger Games movies, one of them at least. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I had a lot of fun watching the movie and coming up with things that I would talk about in the movie. Let me know in the comments if you prefer it if I just did my opinions and maybe put a few movie sections here and there, or if you enjoy the synopsis before the review kind of a thing. Your opinions of the videos is what directly influence on how I make my videos and such. I mean, I started my channel off as a gaming channel, and look at it now. It's now a movie critique and review channel, which is kind of funny to think about. But be sure to check out the movie yourself. It's available on Disney Plus and DVD and probably many other things. And I guess with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.